afternoon. Welcome to Door County Library's program. This afternoon, we're having a book talk with an author, Erika Nelson, who has written a book called Grade Love 365 about narcissistic abuse. And she works here and lives here in Door County. And Erika, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Thank you, Laura. Welcome to everybody online and welcome to everybody here in person. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Erika Nelson. I am a mental health trauma counselor and in private practice. And I'm also a narcissistic abuse educator and also an author. That was something new for me that I started about 2 years ago. So welcome. Today, I'm going to talk to you about my book. But before I get started with that, I want to talk to you about narcissistic abuse because it's really important that we have the information, whether you're going through it yourself, whether you know or love someone that's going through it. The more we become aware of it as a society, the less prevalent it will be, and the more people who might have been victims will stand up and say, no, I don't want to be treated this way. So narcissistic abuse. It's a devastating, destructive, and unfortunately, sometimes deadly abuse. It's the type of abuse that can erase a person before they even realize what's happening. It involves mental and emotional abuse, and it can also involve physical abuse, financial abuse, or spiritual abuse. Think of, I don't know if you've heard this saying before about the frog. If you put a frog in a pot of cool water, it'll sit there, and if you slowly warm it up, it'll stay in there. It won't realize that the heat is going up and it's in danger. And it'll come to a boiling and the frog will stay in there. Now, if you put a frog in boiling water, it'll immediately jump out. So in narcissistic abuse, it's so subtle and so insidious that people don't even realize it's happening. We'll talk about the narcissistic abuse cycle. So the first phase of the cycle is called idealization, but a lot of people know it better as love bombing. Okay, this is when the narcissist is, okay, let me back up a little bit. So narcissists are in this to get their needs met. Their needs for validation, their need for feeling worthy. So they have well-honed skills that they use. Now, and narcissists can be, they can be teenagers, they can be adults, they can be doctors, lawyers, neighbors, parents, children, anybody can be a narcissist. They are cut off from who they are inside. Their core self, like our core selves, are connected to God, something greater, whatever you want to call it. And we are fed from that. That enlivens us. And with a narcissist, for whatever reason, sometimes it can be genetic. Sometimes it's abuse and neglect. Sometimes it can be environment. They don't know exactly what causes it. They can't produce that on their own. So they need it from outside of them. So think of a hunter, they're going to listen carefully to what we say. They're going to look for where we're vulnerable, what we want, what we need, what we never got. Those are the things they're going to use then to become everything we need. So we, as the victim, we think we hit the jackpot. We think we found the love of our life. And we so easily give ourselves to that person because for most of us, I want to say, most of us have wounds from the past inside. And we are yearning to get those needs met. And those, we yearn for, attention, validation, love, unconditional love. So we think they're it. And we miss all the red flags that are flying by our head as they are pushing our boundaries, testing us to see what they can get away with, kind of figuring out where we're at. So that is the love bombing stage. So they are just wonderful, generous, giving, gentle, kind, all the things. Once they know that we are a stable supply of narcissistic supply, which is that energy that we feed them. Once they know that they've got us and we're safe, we're going to stay, then they start to go into the second stage, which is devaluation. Then they start to try to feel powerful by making us react. Our reaction feeds them. So if it's a positive reaction, we're feeding them. If it's a negative reaction, we're feeding them our energy. So they will start to, it might be, oh, you're wearing that, or, why can't you be more like so-and-so? Or you'll start to notice that things aren't quite the same. The devaluation is the part that breaks us. Then, once we are basically exhausted and have no more energy left in us, nearly, then comes the discard. And that is where there's a narcissist online, a recovering narcissist, that talks about how when they're done, that's it. No matter how long you've been with them, when something in them shuts off, they don't feel anything for you anymore, they're done. So a discard can happen completely where you're done with the relationship. They don't want to see you anymore, they leave you, whatever. A discard can also happen during the relationship. So you're in a relationship. Now I'm talking intimate relationship right now. You're in a relationship and all of a sudden your partner is like, oh, I don't think this is working anymore. And let's say they just leave for a few days. There you are, they're, not you, but somebody is checking their phone and they're so upset and they're, texting, I love you, please don't leave me, let's give this another chance. That is a huge feed of narcissistic supply for the narcissist. They feel important, they feel powerful that they could get that response out of you. So that often the discard is used to get narcissistic supply as well. Now to do the devaluation, there are different tactics that narcissists use. The first one I'll talk about is gaslighting. And you may have heard of the movie Gaslight from the 60s, I think. So gaslighting is used to make us think we're losing our minds or to not trust ourselves, to make us doubt our reality. So, you might say, you might be upset by how the person acted. And they say, what are you talking about? That never happened. I don't even know what you're so upset for. Or in the case of an intimate relationship, I didn't flirt with her. You're nuts. Your jealousy is a problem. You're standing in the kitchen doing the dishes and your partner comes in and says, you're not ready yet. We have a party to go to. I told you this morning. No, you didn't. Things like that. So what that does is it undermines our self-confidence. It undermines our self-trust. It makes us question our very self. And we get to the point, people who are going through gaslighting, where you don't want to say anything unless you have proof for what you're saying, because you know it will likely be disputed. So you kind of stop talking. You just don't even try. Another tactic is triangulation. There's a couple different kinds of triangulation that I look at. So the first is toxic triangulation. Maybe you've heard of this. It happens a lot in alcoholic families, but it can happen in any relationships where, let's say, okay, my sister is at the back of the room. Let's say that I have an issue with her. So I go to my other sister and I'm like, what is her deal? What is going on with her? That's triangulation. I'm not going to her directly. I am going around her, behind her back. And it can happen, again, it can happen with a boss in a work setting. Imagine if a boss goes to one of the employees and talks about another employee. That employee while they may feel very important, I guess, because the boss came to them, they're going to obey and do the right thing so the boss doesn't say it about them to somebody else. So in a way, triangulation can be a form of control. Destructive triangulation is something that's a little darker. Destructive triangulation happens to diminish us, to devalue us. Again, in an intimate relationship, it might be like somebody who's always looking, let's say, just male, female, because I'm female. Okay, let's say the male is always talking about other women. Oh, look at that woman, or flirting in front of us. Now, if we have issues from the past of abandonment or not being validated, not being loved for who we are, not having space to exist, that's going to hurt a lot. And even if we don't have issues, it's still going to hurt. It's disrespectful. So that can also happen in family dynamics where a parent is a narcissist. There may be a golden child. And that can transfer from day to day. Who's the golden child that day? And why can't you be more like your brother? Or why can't you be more like your sister? So that is, I will say that is the one that broke me because of my history of abandonment and abuse. So it can be very destructive, triangulation. There's more tactics. I'm just going to give you one more: stonewalling. This happens when you want to talk to the toxic person or the abuser about their behavior. You want to let them know, hey, this isn't okay. No, I am not talking to you about this again. Here we go again. I chuckle with some friends of mine that have been through it too. There's a movement that's so classic among narcissists. They throw their head back and they roll their eyes and they go, oh, here we go again. It's amazing, truly, how similar narcissists do behave in the tactics that they use. So they don't want to own their behavior. They don't want to be called out. A narcissistic personality disorder is a shame-based disorder. We think that the narcissist is in love with themselves and they're so strong. They're not. It's a shame-based disorder. They don't feel good enough to be who they are. So they create a persona and become someone else. And they have to keep the validation and the energy coming in to support all that. And to me, that makes my heart sad, because there is a real person in there. There is a heart in there of a beautiful person, but they got the wrong information growing up, or maybe they have mental health, whatever the issue is. Now that said, we have to be very careful. I would say that the true mark of healing from narcissistic abuse is when you can keep love in your heart for that person, but you keep huge boundaries also. You're not naive, and you're not, that's part of the healing process where we all are naive. We think it's okay to go back, whatever. But that's the way I see it. Now, some people see it differently. Some people think narcissists are evil. They think that, maybe the behavior is evil. I might call the behavior evil sometimes, but I will never trash a narcissist. I won't trash anybody, because I hold the space of love in all the work I do. Love and grounded wisdom, boundaries. So then I want to introduce you to my baby, my book baby, Brave Love 365. The subtitle for it is Daily Inspiration, Validation, and Support for Survivors of Narcissistic Abuse and Toxic Relationships. This book is a daily book. This is what makes it different. There's nothing out there, at least when I did my research and when I was writing it, there was not another book out there that offered daily validation and support, which is so critical when you're healing from narcissistic abuse. You feel, at first, many people feel crazy, you feel alone, you feel broken, and you're not. And I'm here to walk with you to let you know that none of that is true. You're amazing. So each day there is, I don't know if you can see it, but each day there is one page. And it's brief enough bites that you can read it, contemplate it. And then at the end of each page, there's a little, today I will, whatever, I'll think of something or I'll do something. I did not use any personal pronouns. So whether a man who is an abuse victim is picking this up or a woman, it fits. Whether, however you identify, whatever relationship you've been in, it all fits. I wanted it to be inclusive for everyone. This book has 33 years of my healing in it, from narcissistic abuse, from all kinds of things in the past. So really, anybody could get something out of my book. And you can go as deep as you want with it or as shallow as you want. I had reviewers review my book before it came out. I had one woman that said she read through the whole thing in 2 days and really, enjoyed it. So I've had other people say that they take one page and they just digest it, they just sit with it. So it's however you want to use it, really. I also go deeper into a few different subjects in it. I touch on codependency a little more. I touch on being a highly sensitive person, an empath. That can be really painful going through narcissistic abuse when you're highly sensitive. It is anyway, and I also touch on inner children. So you've probably heard of the concept of an inner child, right? Working with the inner child, healing the inner child. I pose a different thought on that of working with our inner children. When we're growing up, traumas can happen to us along the way. And we kind of get stuck at that age. That part of us couldn't incorporate into our growing system of self. So it's left this little, child within us, and they can be male, they can be female. I've got a male inner child in there. They're left holding the trauma. So narcissistic abuse, it makes us do deep healing if we're going to recover from it, because not only do we have wounds from what just happened to us with the narcissist, but it pulls open all of our own wounds from the past as well. So we're left dealing with all of this. So a really great place to start in the healing when I work with people is to start identifying and getting in touch with these little beings within us, our little inner children. And I used to think it was kind of kooky. In fact, I was involved with a spiritual narcissist at one point who kind of told me what reality was for a while. And they thought that that was just all ego, the inner child, and I, through my professional work as well as my own personal work, disagree highly. I have found amazing healing. Now, it's not an end all, there's more healing to do, but it's a really great place to start. So, who is this for? Ideally, in my mind, when I was writing this, it was written for people who are out of the toxic relationship, and ready to heal, okay? And it was written with the idea of intimate partner abuse. But really, as we've kind of talked about, it's good for people it's good for professionals. I've had counselors buy it. I've talked to police officers about it, people that work in the courts. So it's helpful for the people that are supporting victims who are trying to get out of narcissistic abuse. It's also helpful for people who are still in it. I do know some people who are still in it that read this book, and let's say it plants seeds. They may not leave tomorrow, they may not leave next year, but it's going to plant the seeds to help them slowly or quickly build a foundation under them, a new foundation to help them leave and start a new life. Okay, so Brave Love. What is Brave Love? Where did I get this title? The title came to me pretty soon after I started writing it. And I kind of grew into the title as I wrote it. And I began to understand it better as I wrote it. Brave love is a love that starts within us. It comes from within us. And it's the kind of love that no longer makes us willing to apologize for who we are or to shrink ourselves to try to make somebody else comfortable. There's no, once brave love is flowing through you, you will not allow yourself to be treated that way anymore. And again, there's a healing process. I can't tell you how many times I reached out. I even went back for 2 months after I left. You know, that's part of the process. But brave love is what I want to say, it's the gift of our hard work from our deep healing. Okay, what else? This book offers self-care strategies. One of the biggest, now not everybody can do this, but one of the biggest self-care strategies when healing from narcissistic abuse is going no contact with your abuser. That means blocking phones, blocking social media. There's only so much you can do to block email, but you can make it go to trash. So that's a huge step. Now, not everybody can do that. What if your parent is narcissistic? Some people do set those boundaries and they cut off contact, but what if they need you? No, but they have nobody else. What do? You know, I've been running into more and more people who have a narcissistic child, and that is often accompanied by other mental health issues. And that's a tough one. What do? You know, so I eventually will be having some support for people like that, a class or a group or something, because it's heartbreaking. There's a lot of education in my book about narcissistic abuse, about a lot of the things I'm talking to you about, but also self-care things. Deeper exploration. The end of the book is kind of a deep dive, if you choose to go there, into yourself more, into the questions of what you believe, what your true support is, things like that. And in the middle of the book is sort of, some of it is introspective. It's like, who am I? What do I believe? Where do I want to go? What do I want my life to be like? So it also addresses a little more of who a narcissist is, who a victim is, what gets us there, and what makes us stay. There's very good reasons we stay, even when other people can look in and go, oh, what is she doing? You know, there's a trauma bond right in our brain. It's right in the chemicals of our brain. So there's more of that in here. So I want to read to you a poem before I go into question and answers. I also want to say, for the people who are online and in person, I'm selling books here, but if you know of somebody that might want a book or one of my journals that I created to go with this, you can find them at the Pearl of Door County. You can find them at Other Worlds Books and More, and also at Novel Bay Booksellers. So they're easily obtained here in Sturgeon Bay. All right, I'm going to read you a poem with a qualification at the end. The poem is by Marianne Williamson. It's called Our Greatest Fear. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Our deeper fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us the most. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that's within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So I acknowledge that not everybody connects with God. I understand there's people that connect with Goddess or the universe or whatever connects us to that which lives us. So that said, I also acknowledge that this is something we hold in our hearts. we don't get there tomorrow. This is when we do the healing work of beginning to embrace our great love and loving ourselves, that we get to this place. So that is what I have for you today, about narcissistic abuse and about my book. But I would love to answer questions if anybody's got some for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think the narcissist could heal through your book as well?
That's a very good question that I've not considered. The question was, could the narcissist heal through my book as well? I think that, there are programs out there for narcissists to go through. Now, this is a tricky spot because when we're victims and we're in the relationship and we want it to work so bad, when we hear, hey, there's help out there, we're like, that's it, I'm staying. He's gonna get help, or she's gonna get help, right? So I want to make this qualification that, first of all, the percentage of narcissists that ever get diagnosed or receive help is very, very low. I don't know what that percentage is, but the chances of that happening is, I want to say, minuscule. However, I know people right now that are in treatment. I know therapists that work with narcissists. I've worked with narcissists before. So there are people that choose to get help and do the really hard work. Now, can they ever be fully alive and, fully in touch with themselves? I'm not sure. And so to answer your question, I could almost see it going one of two ways. If a narcissist read my book, I could see a narcissist being very wounded if they read some of the things I wrote. Now, again, I will not trash a narcissist, but I will talk about their behavior. So that might be painful because they're fragile inside. And again, that doesn't mean we should, be gentle with them and help them. We should get away. If we are being abused, we should leave and get away. But to recognize that they might be pained by what they read in here. Maybe not. Maybe their ego defenses are really strong and they wouldn't even want to read it, Maybe the ones whose hearts, narcissistic personality disorder is the top of the spectrum, right? To be diagnosed as a narcissist, you have to have different traits that we diagnose with using a book called the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. So that's the top of the spectrum. Then we go down from there. Then there are people with narcissistic traits. There might be people that have high narcissistic traits, all the way down to somebody who looks in the mirror a lot or is always worried about what people think. But make no mistake that one narcissistic trait can destroy a person too. There's all kinds of angles to look at this from. So somebody who's still somewhat in touch with their heart, they might really heal reading this book. And that can be the hardest thing, is sometimes when we're with a narcissist or our parent is a narcissist or whatever, we see their hearts a little bit. They shine through once in a while. And that's what makes it heartbreaking, to realize that we have to leave to save ourselves, that they are not willing or capable, depends on the person, of getting help and changing their behaviors. So, did that answer your question? Okay, good. Yes.
I guess I see control issues.
Okay.
And to me, I believe some police officers have a lot of control issues.
Okay.
The person didn't do what they should have, they had to arrest them and all this.
Yep.
And do you think that would carry over into the family?
From their job into the family?
Correct.
I believe it would. Yeah, I think that's a great question. Police officers, unfortunately, right now are really visible. We've had situations where their behavior has been awful, unacceptable, deadly, not good. I have to put a plug in because my nephew and my son are both officers. They're the good ones. That's okay. They're not, no, it's okay. No, it's like anybody else. You can have narcissistic officers and good officers, and then the narcissistic ones give them a bad name, just like, dating, like women who have been hurt by a narcissist can't even see the good ones, so, yeah. I do think that it can come out in our profession and that we bring it home. I think it's part of our core selves, and we bring, what's that saying? Wherever we go, there we are. We bring ourselves. So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
you're welcome. Thanks for the question. Any other questions?
Did you find the book energizing or exhausting to write?
Depended on the entry, honestly. I will say that the hardest entry for me to write was the one on gaslighting. Because when I wrote the entries in this book, I had to really, in my head, dive back into the moments of all that I was writing about, so that I could meet people right where they were at that were going through it, sorry. So I couldn't believe the depth of pain that was still inside of me about having been gaslighted, whatever. So some days, now I closed my practice to write this book. I knew just inside it was so strong, like this book needs to be written. So I closed my counseling practice, and every day that was my job. And there was some pressure there to get it done because I needed to open my practice again. So that helped me keep going. But some days I would get 3 done. That was probably the most I ever got done in a day. Because I really had to tune in, and I really had to, some days I got 1 done because they were exhausting and triggering. But I will tell you that the day after I closed my counseling practice, the entire outline flew out of my head onto paper. All the topics for the whole book came out. Now, unfortunately, writing each entry was not quite that easy. But that's how that worked. So
Very interesting. So how long did it take you to write this?
it took me 9 months to write this book, which is insane. And it is a little like, it was like giving birth, honestly.
Did you feel like a narcissist to writing it?
I was steeped in both sides, narcissist, victim, all of it.
I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that seems like it's part of the healing when that you question, you have to put so much more energy back into yourself to heal yourself. That, we're reading the jokes about narcissists on the way, and thank you, Wisconsin. What did the narcissistic cow say? Me.
Oh, that's a good one.
That self-love is something that needs to happen too.
Right.
But it seems like the cup fills up again and it overflows. So
There's something to that though. I had a coach that I was working with while I was writing this. And there were days where I got really frustrated with this book. Like, it's going to take me forever and it's going to be the end of me. And she's like, wait a minute, are you like making this like the narcissist? And I was like, oh my gosh, I am. Because that patterning, you work through it until you're through it. You repeat those same thoughts. And so there's another person, well, another book, another thing that's expecting everything from me. I gave it everything, and I will never write another book in that manner again. And I'm glad I did do it like that with this one because it needed to get out there. But yeah, so there was some self-care, there was some self-love. I really had to, there was a balance for sure. Yeah. Yeah. You had a question. Were you going to raise your hand?
Well, I was thinking, one thing I noticed is that the word narcissist is thrown around very loosely. And, what qualifies as a true narcissist? It seems to me that a lot of people who seem extremely confident is a classic idea of a narcissist. But then I've noticed how people, like you were talking about shame, people who are, really insecure can be very narcissistic as well. So, how do you identify it as, true narcissism? And I'm glad you said there's like you know, a range.
Right.
And we all have narcissistic moments, you know, so.
There's schools of thought on that. This is a great question. There's so much to this question. So
Yeah.
there is one school of thought that we are all a little narcissistic, right? We all kind of care what we look like. We can be self-centered sometimes. There's another school of thought that says, no, that is not narcissism. That is self-care, that is, you know, maybe insecurity, whatever. So I'm not completely sure which school of thought I'm in personally on that, but that's a good thing to raise. Then there are different kinds of narcissists. So you talked about the one who is very insecure inside and may not look confident and all of that. That is typically a covert narcissist. And I would say they are the most dangerous and destructive because they're seething inside and they are constantly taking it out on the victim. So there's also like intellectual narcissists, people that get their value and their kudos from being smart. There's the classic narcissist, which you referred to, that we all know, like you can just see it, you know, they're full of themselves. But the key is, yes, everybody's throwing around that word. A narcissist is somebody who is working to meet their needs, which destroys another person. Now, I do have my list. When I diagnose people, this is the list that we use to diagnose a narcissist. I need my glasses for this one. Okay. They have to have pervasive pattern. Well, I'm going to go over 5 or more of the following criteria. Now, and again, I have to do a qualification. Please don't diagnose anybody or anyone that's watching this online. And this is not to share with people you think is a narcissist. This is not therapeutic. This is not to diagnose. Okay, I'm just reading you when I diagnose or when a clinical person does, this is what they look for. Okay, because if there's domestic violence, physical abuse with narcissistic abuse, you can really be unsafe if you were to go to a narcissist and say, dude, you are sick, you know, or whatever. So you never want to do that. This is information for ourselves, for self-care. Okay. So 5 or more of the following. First one, has a grandiose sense of self-importance. So they may exaggerate their achievements or their talents. They expect to be recognized as superior, but they don't really have what it takes to be superior. They're not great at something. Second one is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. So you might see a female narcissist who's walking around so, you know, concerned about their beauty and thinking they are the most beautiful person ever. And, you know, sometimes you see this in movie stars or things like that, or the average person. Ideal love also. Some of the intimate relationships can be incredibly toxic when the narcissist has an ideal love in their mind that you should be providing to them and that you should be as a couple. Puts a whole lot of pressure on the victim. 3, believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions. 4, requires excessive admiration. 5, has a sense of entitlement. So they have unreasonable expectations of favorable treatment when they really haven't earned it. Number 6, they can be interpersonally exploitative. So they take advantage of others to get that narcissistic supply. So it can be, you know, one of the things that happens is the narcissist will keep other sources of supply around themselves so that if they're not getting as much as they need from their main source, they will go to these other people and they feed them crumbs just to keep them there, just enough so that in case they need another fix, they can go to them. So that's exploitative, you know, that's for there's no concern for the other person. Is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her, is 8. And then 9, shows arrogant or haughty behaviors or attitudes. So to be diagnosed as a, a narcissistic personality disordered person, those are the criteria. Did I answer everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Good.
just an ongoing thing when you are dealing with someone.
It is ongoing, unless you can do that no contact. That's a good point too. There's people that were in a relationship, in an intimate relationship with a narcissist that have children together. Or there might be a couple that owned a business together. What do? You can't go no contact. There are many tools out there though, that let you have, well, what do they call it? I can't think of the name, but minimized contact. So you might refuse to have contact with this other person or communicate with them unless it's documented. So through email, through text, there are apps out there that allow both people to put their information in, with updates on the children, and you never have to have contact with them. So, there are ways to do that, but it's tough. And even after the narcissist is out of your life, they're still in your head for a long time sometimes. It's the healing. It's the healing that helps to move that through so we can be free of it.
So when I'm done highlighting the book of all the positive things, you're gonna make cute little Louise Hayes cards.
Yeah, there you go. I have to give my sister a shout out. When you say cute little Louise Hayes card, I can't talk. Louise Hayes cards. My sister, who you guys online cannot see, but Lisa Iverson, is my right-hand woman. She comes to all of these things with me. She created cards. Now, we talked about how narcissistic abuse can tragically turn deadly at some times. Suicide can be part of that. My sister lost her son. And as she processed through that, she created healing cards for parents or really anyone who has lost a child to suicide or lost a loved one to suicide. So thank you for asking that, because I needed to bring that up.
So I like to think of loss as it being a gift. It's a gift of angels.
Right.
Gifted angels.
Yeah. 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 So thank you for asking that. Yeah, what else?
Well, how did you go about publishing it?
That's a good question.
Like the speaker we had last week, Valerie Laurizio, who writes novels,
She's got
said
fantastic
she
books.
had a couple novels published by mainstream publishers, but then that took too much time out of her day and she had a job to do.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you actually stopped working at your counseling job.
Right.
So how did you, it's a different, she decided to go independent after that.
Okay.
So what is your feeling on that sort of thing, and what will you do in the future?
Okay. I knew that I needed to there was an urgency to get this book out. So if I would have gone through a traditional publishing house, Random House, whatever, it would have taken a year to do it. And I would not have had control over what was said. This is a tender topic. And I needed to make sure that the integrity of it stayed the same all the way through. So mostly it was the time. I didn't want to wait that long to get it out into the world. I think there's a lot of benefits to doing it this way. There are traditionally published authors that poo-poo their, turn their noses down at us or whatever you want to say. But I think that I liked the creative process that went into creating it, writing it, but then I had a designer I worked with that created it, and we were going to put color in it. Oh, it was going to be great. We were just going to have a little swatch of color behind each date and, some separating pages that were color until we looked at the cost. So I was like, okay, not this one. So, yeah, big money. So that's the way we chose to do this one. I have a first draft done of my next book, which I did during COVID, during the quarantine. But I couldn't even finish it because this one was knocking on my brain to get out. So the next one is a novel, and it is It's sort of like a love story. It details a woman's journey through a toxic relationship, and it does bring awareness of narcissistic abuse in what I'm hoping is a bit more of a mainstream way. It's got a little mystery in it, a little, a little romance, a little intrigue. That one, I had thought about maybe querying agents, maybe trying to get a publishing company, but I decided not to right now because I think I want to do the same thing. I think I just want to get it out into the world. I'm also creating an online course for survivors to help in the healing. So I think once I get those 3 things done, maybe just to say I've done it, I'll try. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but.
And someone on Zoom says that she's in internet.
So thank you so much for being
across
here.
the country.
Oh, that's great. I recognize your name from social media. I believe I've seen you on my page, so thank you.
Yeah.
I should tell you too, that if you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and I just got on TikTok. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but it's enough to, make a post. So you can find me as author Erika Nelson. That's my name. And then I have a website, which is just erikanelson.com, ERIKA Nelson, NELSON.com. So
And have you started your practice again?
I have, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, my practice is all set to go now, and I am accepting new clients. I'm not full yet. So I do obviously work with, people that are survivors of narcissistic abuse and toxic relationships. I work with people who have suffered trauma, childhood trauma to adult trauma, but I talk with everybody. You can call me for a free 15-minute phone consultation, and I let people know the way I work, and then they let me know what they need, and we see if it's a fit. So. And I do work virtually, I should say that too. So I can work with anyone, anywhere in Wisconsin.
Are there any more questions then?
Any more questions? No. Oh, yes, sorry.
Do you work in Michigan as well?
I don't, unfortunately.
You said online.
I work online, but I'm only licensed in Wisconsin, and right now I can only work in Wisconsin. They're working on coming up with a compact between states, the American Counseling Association, but right now we're not there yet. So yeah, thanks for asking.
Is narcissism considered a mental health?
Narcissistic personality disorder is considered a personality disorder. It's closely connected with psychopathy, so psychopaths and sociopaths. So it's all looked at very similar.
So that has to be very careful diagnosis.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, I've never diagnosed someone as a narcissist because I look deeper. When someone comes and sits in my chair and we've agreed it's a match, I'm looking for the heart.
So we're looking at it as a behavior, really. It's a behavior
Right.
that persona doesn't get down deeper.
I believe at the core of every single one of us on this planet is our heart, is our beating heart that is connected with our source. Now, there are people that would absolutely vehemently argue with that. And I respect their opinions, that this is my opinion. And every day, everything I do, I look for that in people. Now, if there's a whole lot of crazy stuff around it, I'm going to have boundaries. I'm not going to interact with that person or be with that person, but I will always keep my eye on the heart, even standing back and having a boundary there. So, yeah. Yes.
Erika, have you ever considered working with the young people? I mean, have you had the opportunity to go around to the schools and make a presentation? I think it's so important right now.
I agree 1000%. I've heard this is true of highly sensitive people, that we get a lot of ideas all the time. I have had to start a notebook and that is one of the items in my notebook. I would love to put a program together for people in the schools, for young people not in the schools, maybe homeschooled, to help them know what's okay to say. You know, it's not okay if it doesn't feel okay to you. It's not. And help them understand that they have a right to speak up and, you know, all those things. I agree. I think that's critical.
Especially on social media, sometimes they'll say something quickly and then it's like, it comes back to them. Hey, I shouldn't have said that.
That's a good point. Yeah, that would be important to have in there too. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much, Erika.
Thank you.
I do want to say that in April, the Door County Mental Health NAMI group will be having an author come and speak here in Door County, Ken Duckworth.
Yes.
And they'll be talking about there'll be a couple of book discussions about his book, You Are Not Alone. So anyone interested in the subject.
Is that the one you gave me?
Yes.
That's an amazing resource. I highly recommend anybody who's interested in mental health to read that book. Yeah.
So check on the library website in April and you'll learn more about it. But thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you.